So okay, this is a video of me explaining what you can expect to happen during your Jupiter mahadasha. So Jupiter mahadasha is a planetary time period of 16 years. And the Jupiter mahadasha, you'll just naturally deal with things in relation to Jupiter. And maybe the houses that it rules. So, Jupiter is an indicator of children and students and teachers and religion and faith and politics and law. And that's just about the main things. I know Jupiter is an indicator of a husband in a woman's chart. But, everybody's not going to find love of a goddamn husband. And like I said, Jupiter is only a significant of a husband and a woman's chart. So I'm trying to make this a video that is relatable to people in general. And as I have said in previous mahadasha videos, only maybe a quarter of what I'm saying might relate to you, because ultimately I would need to know your house, sign, nakshatra, and aspects and conjunctions of the planet in regards in relation to this mahadasha. So, one of the things, like I said, Jupiter is an indicator of children. So, you could say that easily during the mahadasha of Jupiter, a person could have children. You might adopt somebody, you might make a kid, or you might watch over something as if it was your kid. Like you might become like a manager or a supervisor. Because Jupiter is also a significant of like managers and supervisors. So you might watch over employees and underlings as if they was children or students and stuff. And Jupiter is like related to politics and laws, because one of the things that's in relation to part of politics is that, or lawmakers, is that they come together and they sit and maybe discuss and liberate. They go and sit and discuss and stuff about what they believe should be passed as a bill or a law. And if they all agree, and if it make it through these several different judicial systems and branches of government and all that good stuff, then it becomes enforced. It becomes a law in that state or over the country that you have to abide by this, or you could be maybe punished or whatever. So that's very Jupiterian. That's very sort of religion-like or faith-like or belief-like. You believe this, and you might believe in something so strong that you feel as though that anyone who doesn't believe it should be punished or killed or whatever. Which is sort of makes sense why Jupiter rules the 9th and 12th house. 9th house Sagittarius, 12th house Pisces. The 9th house is that religion and belief system that I just told you about. But the 12th house is foreign lands and places of isolation, like a hospital or a rehabilitation center or a jail. If your 9th house belief systems sort of go against maybe the rules and foundations of society or the country or state, well then, you might be like an outcast. You might be treated like an outcast and feel isolated. That 12th house theme stuff. Or you might be sent to jail or whatever, or feel isolated, which is more 12th house things. Or you might go in a foreign, far away, isolated place to maybe find like-minded people who doesn't share your typical views of the masses. So the more you think about it, the more it makes sense why Jupiter rules the 9th and 12th house. But speaking of, foreign lands and all that stuff, with Jupiter dasha, you could easily say that one person might begin to travel more during your dasha, during the dasha of Jupiter. You might take a trip. But then again, granted, 16 years is a long time, so of course anybody could take a trip or two during the planetary time period of Jupiter and their life. Since the 9th house is associated with blessings and luck and all that stuff, and Jupiter is stereotypically known to be associated with optimism and all that stuff, a person during the planetary time period of Jupiter could feel very optimistic despite the obstacles that they'll go through in life. They'll feel optimistic despite the 12th house things that they might deal with. Because you see, 6th, 8th, and 12th house are known as the Shanta houses, which is obstacle-giving houses. Houses that causes obstacles and trouble in your life. And, the path of maybe faith and spirituality and religion is not all, roses and sunshine and stuff. You might think or been under the novice amateur perspective and belief and assumption that being real religious or spiritual is so divine and peace-giving, but you don't realize that it can also be very turbulent and stressful as someone who probably isn't into it, But at least maybe during the Jupiter Dasha, there might be a tinge or a pinch of optimism or you finding a faith in religion through the turmoil that you might deal with. You might change your religion or your faith during this time period, or adopt something new and crazy, especially if your Jupiter is under a lot of malefic influences, or depending on what falls into the 9th house from making Jupiter your ascendant, or depending on if your 9th lord in your birth chart has some type of connection with your Jupiter, or if your 9th lord, your birth chart's 9th lord, falls into maybe a difficult house, a difficult position by making Jupiter the ascendant, then we might see that a lot of difficulties could occur with 9th house themes potentially. But you might deal with issues in relation to religions and faith, or teachers and the teachings of your father or father-like figure. Since Jupiter originally rules the 9th house, the 9th house is associated with the teachings of a father or father-like figure. So you might deal with issues with those type of things also. You might become imprisoned, maybe on a negative note, during your Jupiter mahadasha with it originally ruling the 12th house. But like I said, you could feel very optimistic too, because Jupiter is also a significator of wealth and all that stuff. So you can feel blessed, and then you could also feel very lost and confused when it comes to your religion, your faith, and laws and politics. And then you might go into isolation or get imprisoned or go to a rehabilitation center or something during this period. A lot of things can happen during the 16-year period of Jupiter. Just like anything can happen. A multitude of shit can happen during the dasha of any planet. I'm just speaking very general. And as I've done with my other videos, you gotta look at the dasha of your planet from different lugnas, from different ascendants. You gotta see, where does your Jupiter go from the birth ascendant? What house does it go into? That area would be highlighted and it'll be of significance. You gotta look at, where does Jupiter go at when you make Moon your ascendant? That area will be of prime significance and importance. And you would deal with themes of that stuff. Look at stuff from making Sun the ascendant, the Sun chart. Make Sun the ascendant, see where does Jupiter fall at from making Sun the ascendant. Or look at things from Dasha Lugna. Dasha Lugna, which means you take the planet that you're running the mahadasha of and you make it your ascendant, which in this case would be Jupiter, since Jupiter is the mahadasha, the planet that I'm talking about right now. I know Jupiter, it deals with like the liver, and main thing I want to say, since Jupiter rules the goddamn 9th house and the 12th house, the 9th house being associated with the legs and the 12th house being associated with the feet, and Jupiter deals with like expansion and swelling stuff. You might gain weight during your Jupiter dasha. There you go. With Jupiter dealing with fat and expansion, you might gain weight during your Jupiter mahadasha. Maybe health illnesses due to you gaining weight. Swelling could be something of a prominent issue depending on where how your Jupiter is placed. Themes and or issues with your legs and feet could occur during your Jupiter mahadasha. But that is just about all that I can think of. I don't have nothing else really in my notes of significance of what happens or what could happen during your Jupiter mahadasha. I hope this video gave you great clarity and simplified insight of what could happen during your Jupiter mahadasha. And see you when I make my next video.